Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent, is here to tell us more. Simon, the journalist at the heart of this has clearly decided that it's best to put it out there, what he saw and what he knows.
Yeah, absolutely, because the Trump administration did two things yesterday. First of all, they dragged his name through the mud. This is Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, a highly respected veteran journalist here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump yesterday at the White House describing him as a sleazebag, and Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, even intimating on Fox News last night that Jeffrey Goldberg might have engaged in some kind of nefarious activity that resulted in him ending up in that chat room, as opposed to the fact that Mike Waltz himself connected with Jeffrey Goldberg on Signal, and then either Mike Waltz or someone on his team inadvertently added Goldberg to the chat. So that was one aspect of what took place yesterday. And then President Trump said in the Oval Office that none of the content of the messages in the Signal chat was classified, which essentially provided Goldberg with the green light to publish all of this, because if the President of the United States is saying it's not classified, The Atlantic will argue the President of the United States must have declassified any material contained in the chats. So now Goldberg has upped the ante and has shown absolutely clearly that a number of officials, including the President of the United States, were not being truthful when they say that classified war plans were not discussed in the chat. Pete Hegseth adds to the chat a TikTok, literally a timeline for the assault. At 11:44 Eastern Time, right now, he says, the weather is favourable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are go for mission launch. At 21:15 Eastern Time, he says the F-18s will launch. He talks about the targets for this attack. One particular target terrorist, a Houthi leader, is at his known location. So he says, this attack should be on time. It's going to involve drones, MQ-9s, more F-18s that will launch a second strike package shortly thereafter. This goes on and on and on. And then, once it's all happened, that set of airstrikes against the Houthis, he provides an update along with Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, making it clear that thus far the mission has been a success, and indeed there is tremendous congratulation offered within the chat from a variety of figures, including the President's Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, Stephen Miller, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, and Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, takes a bit of a victory lap. So this doesn't just up the ante on the part of The Atlantic. This is Jeffrey Goldberg proving that when he said classified information and war plans were put into this chat, something that Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, under oath denied yesterday in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Goldberg was telling the truth. Now, the administration will argue Pete Hegseth had the capacity and the power to declassify this intelligence, and they will say that this was declassified by Pete Hegseth seconds before he pasted the war plan into the chat. But it's absolutely clear that a top secret war plan was trafficked in a Signal group chat.
And it wasn't even just the plan, was it? There was real-time intelligence and what looks to be real-time commentary when Hegseth says in an update after the initial attacks that they would go on through the night.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike Waltz at one point apologizes to others in the group, the National Security Advisor, because he puts out a message celebrating the fact that the building in which one of the Houthi leaders was present at the time of the assault had collapsed. And he doesn't quite make it clear what he's talking about. And JD Vance, the vice president, responds and says, what? And Waltz says, typing too fast. The first target, their top missile guy, we had positive ID of him walking into his girlfriend's building, and it's now collapsed. To which JD Vance responds, excellent. So the notion that this could be happening. Now, let's be clear. Signal is an encrypted app. but it is absolutely not approved within government circles for this kind of conversation, especially given the fact that there are secure facilities that all of these officials could have been using. And also, Mike Waltz, according to Goldberg, has a setting on his Signal account that means all his messages get deleted after a certain period of time. That's completely counter to US law. Every single message needs to be kept, placed eventually into the National Archives. This is part and parcel of the public record. So this is only going to complicate matters, I think, for the Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, particularly.
And briefly, if you would, in terms of consequences, we've seen time and time again that different rules seem to apply to Donald Trump and the people around him, or at least he attempts that different rules apply to him. What should and might flow from this in terms of pushback on Capitol Hill?
Well, under normal pre-Trump circumstances, politicians from both sides of the aisle would come together and would demand resignations and investigations and inquiries. We don't live in normal times, and the Republicans yesterday on Capitol Hill certainly were in supine position, not doing very much to challenge any of those officials that were testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee. There's a hearing taking place here today in the House, which will see the same officials testifying. Let's see if the Republicans there give Tulsi Gabbard an opportunity to revise what now appears to look like perjury under oath yesterday before the Senate Intelligence Committee. But everything here hinges on only one thing now. Do Republicans on Capitol Hill quietly say to Donald Trump, Hegseth's got to go? Is Pete Hegseth or Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, now under so much pressure from Republicans on Capitol Hill that their positions become untenable? And, that would require Republicans on Capitol Hill who have demonstrated no vertebrae suddenly to acquire some, and it's not clear that's going to happen.
OK, we shall see. Thank you so much, Simon. Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent.